Hello and welcome to In the Pocket, the bass guitar podcast where we get the lowdown on the low end. My name's Johnny, a totally average bass player, and each week I'm joined by a different co-host to talk all about that bass. So this week I'm very lucky to be joined by a man of many talents. Bass player for bands such as Clockwork, metal covers band Generations, electro pop artist Darla Jade, and just, general tonal connoisseur. It's Danny Higgins.
Hey, Johnny.
Hello, sir. How the flip are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just looking forward to gigs and that.
I bet you are so excited for those.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because since my last gig, I've kind of overhauled a lot of the bass rig.
I was just thinking, like, for my first gig, I'm gonna be like, ooh, I don't know how this is gonna go with literally all new gear. There's gonna be a lot of like twiddling of pedals on stage.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I'm gonna be there. Like, I've overhauled all of my Helix presets, and then I picked up the dark glass head. So it's just gonna be completely different.
But absolute tonal bliss, no doubt. So to introduce our guests each week, I'm just going to ask them 3 different questions. And the first one is 3 words to describe your bass playing. What 3 words would you use, Danny?
Complementary, effects, pedals.
I like that a lot. Complementary. Why complementary?
Well, because when you're writing bass parts, it doesn't really work if you're just completely serving yourself. You've got to complement what the vocals are doing. Sometimes you could play a unison line with the vocals and that would really work and drive the song forward. Other times you have to completely leave your ego at home and just play 8th root notes.
Yeah, there's a time and a place. And that's very similar to what was it I said for mine? Like functional, I said for mine. So I think we're going at like the same thing there where show off where the song demands it, but your role is to serve that song, isn't it? I think they're very good words to describe it. And effects is something that I think that if nobody's here follows Danny on any social media, you should definitely go and do it. Your Instagram, is it just at Danny Higgins on Instagram?
It's at Higgins_bassist.
Fantastic. Yeah, go and follow him because you're always posting awesome covers and just bits about the bands that you're playing in, and there's always a bit of knowledge that I pick up about whether it's about Helix stuff or pedals. Yeah, great stuff. So moving on to these are meant to be quick fire questions, and they're never quick fire. So the next one for you is, what is your number 1 bass?
Oh, now that's a tough one.
It's like choosing between your children.
Yeah, because there's 3 that I'd say are my go-tos. Like my Gibson Grabber, my Sire P7, and then my Spectre Euro.
They're all so different as well.
Yeah.
But there wasn't one out of those that you'd go, yeah, it's good. If I have to have just one, it's going to be that one.
That's a really tough one because with Clockwork, Generations, and Darla, the Euro's my go-to bass. Mm. But then when I do guest sessions and stuff, a lot of the time I'm using the P because it's a P bass. Yeah,
it fits all of the genres, all of the mixes. Yeah, it's just there's a reason why it's stuck around so long. So I'm going to take the Spectre as the answer because I know you want that Spectre, sponsorship, that endorsement.
I want them to make me a signature model. It's just a standard Euro but purple.
Oh please! Oh, I've just got. I mean, we can see each other here, but we won't be able to see it on the podcast. But I've got my purple bass behind me, and I never knew I needed a purple bass until I got one. Pink all day, but purple.
I need a purple one for $1. It just suits the aesthetic.
Yes, it really, really would. That's your next. I'm going to be having a look out for that for you now. You're going to be bombarded.
I've found there are 2 Spectres I think that are currently in production. They've got the Euro LT, which they do in a transviolet. And then that's got Bartolini pickups and I think a dark glass preamp, which is a bit of an odd setup, but the demo's cool.
That is a strange combination actually, because I always think Bartolinis are quite, I wouldn't say, what's the word to use, flat sounding, they're just here is the sound, and
they're quite lo-fi, I find, whereas the dark glass preamps are very much the opposite.
Yeah, interesting combination. I find the same with like Bartolini and Aguilar, like quite similar vibes I get off of those two. And that I don't think they're necessarily for me. I prefer, the hotter pickups, higher output, that kind of thing, to get that clang to cut through that mix. We are, quick fire questions, like I said. My God. Okay, so the last quick fire question for you, Mr. Higgins, is why did you pick up the bass? Where did it start?
Well, it started when I was, I must have been 12, 13, and I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to play anything, to be honest. And then me and my nan went into a guitar shop up in, I think it was like Carlisle. We were like on a family holiday. And I was like, I just saw it was a stag bass shaped kind of like a warlock. And me being an edgy 12-year-old with like multiple studded belts. Oh, that's the coolest thing ever.
That's the one for me. Nan, I want the pointy one.
Basically. But it was an awful instrument. Bloody awful.
I've not had good experiences with Stag. I mean, it's like cables and stuff. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, their cables are great. Like their drum hardware is solid. Their cymbals, actually, the cymbals are actually really good.
Oh yeah, actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, I've known drummers to have lots of Stag stuff. Actually,
yeah, the drummer in my old band Blue Origin, he had a Stag endorsement, and we literally toured using the Dual Hammered series cymbals, and they were really good.
Well, I don't want to hear any more about drum stuff. All right, this is a bass podcast. Everyone is tuned out. So it was Nan then that enabled it all.
Yeah, because my mum was all like, "Yeah, you're not playing anything because you won't stick to it."
Look at me now, Mum.
Yep. 10 grand in debt for a music degree.
It's great stuff. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the first question. Question 1 comes from Stu's Bass Culture on YouTube. And Stu's Bass Culture from YouTube asks, if Gibson brought out another Grabber reissue, would you be interested? Now, I think this is a pretty simple answer because it's yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you got to be mad to think no, right? Who doesn't like a classic Gibson, especially Grabber?
Especially if they did it like more accurate to the original spec, because my reissue isn't that accurate.
Yeah, sure. Because what year is that one?
It is a 2012.
Yeah. So what? Because is that a Grabber or a Ripper, the one that you've got?
It's the Grabber, the G3.
Oh, of course, yeah. But like on those original ones, I want to see one with a movable pickup.
Yeah, in 2011 they did a reissue with the movable pickup.
Yeah, I bring it back, bring it in some classic colors. I want to see a wine red.
Oh, the wine red one. Oh,
yes,
looks so good.
Ever since I never was into them that much before watching Paramore, live and having Jeremy Davis on stage, who's one of my favorite bass players, rocking one. I was like, oh my God, number one, that sounds so good. Number two, just oozes cool, man. Just so cool.
Like, there's actually a cool story about how Jeremy started using Grabbers, because it was just after they recorded the self-titled album, I think it was. And it was Justin Melville Johnson who produced and recorded the album. And obviously, because the guitars had just left, they needed to really amp it up with bass tones. And Justin being Justin, like, you go into a studio with him and he has like 5,000 different basses. Like everything from Mustangs, Grabbers, everything.
Just like a kid in a candy shop.
Yeah, so on that album, they started like demoing different basses, different pedal combinations and stuff. And that's when Jeremy started getting into more effects and different basses. Because before, I think he was just a jazz bass kind of guy.
Yeah, he had I think he had P basses back in the day, but then was all about jazzes, and then he had like a custom. It was almost like a Jaguar with like the horn removed on it.
I remember him having, was it the Rascal or the Marauder? Something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Really weird, but really cool though. Yeah, basically, to answer your question, Stu, yes, 100% yes. Gibson, come on, just give it to us. Even I'll take a Harley Benton one. Someone.
I just had a thought. A Grabber in Pelham Blue.
Yes, please. Yes, give it to me right now. Yeah, I want it. I want it in. I'll take it in. Well, let's have it in purple. There we go. That's you sorted.
All the classic Gibson colours.
Yeah, I think it's got to be, isn't it? But I think that one red. I think I'd quite like a natural one though, or a black one, because they're quite big bodies on them, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think like a black bass kind of hides that sometimes, which, you know, whatever is your cup of tea. Whatever tickles your pickle. You know, I said tickle your pickle to a couple of American friends, Low End Lobster, and they had no idea what I was on about. They're like, what? But I guess it's just an English thing that I didn't realize. Okay, so basically, yes, 100% yes. Let's move on to the news. I feel like I need some bits of paper to like rustle, or I don't want to do this on camera. Some paper to rustle around to for the news to get my news anchor hat on. Every week we have got, or every 2 weeks, because this is every other week, this podcast at the minute, we have 3 different news items, or however many there are that week. If it's a slow week, you're only going to get one. If it's a busy week, you're getting as much as I can bloody squeeze in. So this week has been a mix of news because we're kind of in the middle or about to go into summer NAMM. So there's kind of some old news and some new news on the precipice of that. Next time, I imagine there's going to be a lot of news from Summer NAMM, or I'm hoping so anyway. So we're going to start off with what is actually quite an old story, but I thought forgot to cover it last time. I thought we could cover it on here with somebody who is very familiar with dark glass, and that is obviously the Dark Ray. So for those who don't know, this is Stingray Ernie Ball bringing out a bass with a distortion overdrive. I think it's the Alpha Omega circuit.
Yeah, it's the Alpha Omega.
Yeah, really weird. I don't know how I feel about like essentially pedals in basses or how useful that would be, but really cool to see these companies working together. I think they need more of that to drive like innovation and things like that. I think it's really cool. But what was your thoughts when you saw them release that?
I'm in 2 minds about it, because on the one hand, it is cool because people haven't really been doing that since the 70s with those weird electro guitars and basses where they had like the little cartridge that plugged in, and they were awful. But it is really cool seeing Dark Glass and Ernie Ball work together like this. But then it also just seems very, very niche.
It is indeed, and I know they're doing very limited numbers of these, especially with the silver one. I think there's more that they're doing at the black one. I like the black one the best personally. I'm just a bit of a sucker for it though. And yeah, it doesn't appeal to me. Like I wouldn't buy one just because obviously they're so expensive and I'm a cheapskate. But also I feel like I like the ability of being able to change up my distortion sound whenever I want with a different pedal, or, you know, I don't want to be locked into one. And if that's kind of got it on board, then you're kind of stuck with it then. And, you know, obviously there are 2 different circuits on there, but that being the Alpha Omega. So you do have a bit of variety. But yeah, for me, I don't know. I like to have my distortion and overdrive and all this that I can turn on and off. So if I'm going into a heavy section, I can kick it on and, you know, it's just there in an instant. Whereas if you've got it on a switch, you know, if I'm going from a bridge into a chorus, I can't then go and like switch it on the bass to turn it on. Or I could, but I'd look ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, like, not the most practical thing. Also for me, it's also like with the signal processing, because you kind of force on having the distortion first in your chain, which for a lot of people will work. But then if you like compressors or preamps before distortion, it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah, you're totally right. I'd not even thought about that side of it as well. That's a really good point. Yeah, you're kind of stuck to it then. It's at the start. I think Line 6 should bring out another Variax with just the HX Stomp on board. Just the whole helix in your bass.
That would be ridiculous.
You can imagine. You could decide the whole chain just via your knobs on your bass, and then it's there. I bet someone could build that themselves, to be fair. There's a YouTube video idea. Okay, yeah. So a cool innovation, something interesting and new and, fun. A lot of people are excited about it, but, a bit limited and not for everyone. So let's move on to the next bit of news, which is hot off the press, kind of a couple of days ago. A couple of people on Instagram sent this to me straight away, and now it's kind of broken the news. That being the new Squire paranormal colors that they brought out. Now this is in with Summer NAMM. So like I said, we're already starting to get a bit of news. Squire are like jumping the gun, getting their announcement out there first. Now with the paranormal ones, these are slightly weird combinations, like a jazz master body with a telly pickup configuration. They're like mashups of different instruments. Last time we only got one bass, which was the 54, I think it was called 54 jazz bass, which is essentially like a 50 style P bass setup, but in a jazz bass with two jazz bass pickups. So it was a really cool bass, and I really enjoyed checking that one out in my review. But now they have brought it out in two new colors, which, maybe this isn't that big of a news item, but for me, it's big news. I like new colors. Looks or aesthetics are a big thing for instruments for me. And so they've now got this black body, still the maple neck, with what looks like an anodized gold scratch plate, and then also a sunburst with a red tortoiseshell pickguard. Now, the one that everyone's talking about, and rightfully so, I think so, is the black one with the gold scratch plate. What do you think of these new additions?
Well, when I saw them out, initially, when they first came out, I wasn't 100% sure if I was into them or not, because I feel like since I've been getting older, I've become more of a traditionalist. But they are really cool because they're quirky, which I enjoy. I'm a sucker for sunburst and torch, which is definitely me becoming an old man.
That's so true. Like, I used to be like, oh God, who would ever have that? It's disgusting. And now I'm like, yeah, that's the best. And the same with like Antigua. I used to be like, oh, that is like sick burst, the worst. Now I'm like,
Antigua's so good.
I'm like, yeah, give me an Antigua jazz all day. Would you pick the sunburst one then over the black one?
Yeah, I would, but I think that's also partially because my first Fender bass was a midnight blue Precision Deluxe with an anodized gold pickguard on it.
Yeah, I know the one. PJ configuration.
Yeah, with the active preamp in it. And it was awful.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I really struggled with it.
Oh,
but no. I think getting an active precision bass is kind of pointless now looking back at it.
Yeah, isn't your Sire active?
Yeah, but I'd never have the active. It's got the same batteries that it came with a year ago. And they're probably dead, I haven't checked.
I find batteries like last such a long time in those things until they don't. And I had that with my old Sire M7, where the batteries died on stage. It just like pretty much crapped out. The output was so low. I was like, oh my God, I've broken my amp. Ooh. The cab's blown. What's happened? And thank God it was just a 9-volt going, but that's kind of put me off that kind of setup forever. Because I was like, I can't be dealing with that anxiety of like, oh, one more thing to go wrong, So I totally get you with like the passive P bass thing. I would 100% just want it to be passive. What are we talking about?
The 50 jazz bass paranormal.
That's right.
But it's all bust.
So this, the sign of a good conversation is just when it goes off the rails, just somewhere else. So some cool new additions. It's still a shame that they only brought out a jazz bass. I wish they brought out some kind of P bass. I don't know what they do, but something. Yeah, I think they could have done something cool.
I think if they went the complete opposite of what they've done with the 50s paranormal jazz, if they gave us a jazz bass body with precision bass electronics in it, basically kind of like a vintagey looking Mark Hoppus bass.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same then. That would be really cool. I have been eyeing up, what was that I saw the other day? It was a Japanese Aerodyne, which is essentially that, but with a jazz bass pickup in there as well.
Aerodynes are lovely, but they're really thin.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with a thin one. I have to keep telling everyone that. There's nothing wrong with a thin one. Anyway, that seems like a good time to move on from that. So the last bit of news is one that I'm not sure you've seen, but might be of interest to you, is, I believe, Spectre have a new bass.
Ooh, the new Eurobolt.
Well, two, actually, I believe, because one that came to my attention, I was like, I've not seen this before, is one of the Bantam.
The Bantams.
Bantam. There we go. You are the connoisseur. Bantam 5-string, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a 5-string short scale.
Yeah, well, it's a 32-inch scale, so it's actually classed as like a medium scale. Really strange. Do you have much experience with, I know you've got a short scale as well, but like medium scales as well?
No, I've never actually played one.
So I've got the Squire, the new Affinity Jaguar arriving. I mean, it should have been here by now, but I think it's arriving next week now. The new, just one with the single humbucker in the Affinity series. And that is also a medium scale. And I'm wondering, like, is this going to be the new trend? Are we going to, we've had short scales around for a while and everyone's doing the short scale thing. Are people now like going that step further and going, medium scale, that's the best of both. Here we go. Because short scale, I think, I really enjoy a short scale. I've got the Gretsch Junior Jet on the wall there. But yeah, interesting for them to do a 5-string with a medium scale.
Very, because every Spectre 5-string I've played has been a 35-inch scale.
Yeah, and that lengthening the scale, it makes those strings tighter, and hence why you get like extended scale basses. It's for that, so you can go low and it's nice and tight. Whereas when you play a short scale, you notice that the strings tension is there's less string tension. So I think I'd really like to play a 5-string like that, but I think it would be very weird, and I don't know if it really functions the way that I personally would want a 5-string too.
It's a weird thing, because I know Warwick actually did a 5-string short scale streamer.
Oh, so this isn't necessarily something new, then it's just a weird thing that's maybe coming back.
It's been going on a few different companies have done it. I think, one of the companies that make those like super Fender basses. One, I think it might have been, I want to say Lackland, maybe,
or like a G&L or like a Charvel.
Yeah, it was something like that, and they released a short scale 5-string. It might have even been MTD. Thinking about it.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure it was MTD.
I mean, I imagine that was very high quality then.
I can imagine it being fantastic.
I'd love to be proven wrong, but for me, it seems very strange.
It seems a little bit counterintuitive to me. We won't know until we play one.
No, but like some people might want that low B string, but be a smaller scale themselves. Like a smaller hand, smaller person might find it difficult. I've got quite big hands, so I find my way around a big bit of wood. Okay, so people with smaller hands might, maybe there is a market there for that.
I can imagine, especially like I've noticed a lot of older players tending to lean towards short scales because they're a bit lighter.
The YouTube comments are rife with people asking about the weight, because it is an important thing, and more important as you get older, because gone are the days of lifting your 810 fridge around and your massive heavy bass.
I remember I had a rehearsal with my Telecaster. I only used my Telecaster bass for a 3-hour rehearsal, and I was dying by the end of it.
Yeah, you don't realize until you do a gig with it, or do a long practice with it, and you're like, oh no, this can't go on. Right, lovely. So that is the end of the news. Let's move on to another question. So our next question comes from Vance French on Instagram, who says, what is your favorite inexpensive overdrive that doesn't suck out the low end and isn't too fizzy? Now, Danny, being a pedal man through and through, and overdrives, I'm sure you are a connoisseur in your experience, what is one? All right, let's start at the other end. Actually, what is one that you think people should avoid for sucking out the low end?
Honestly, I think a lot of tube screamer circuits, tube screamers, they kind of, just because of how they work and how the circuit works, you sort of lose a lot of content below about 100 hertz.
For me, with an overdrive or any kind of distortion type circuit, I want it to be a natural boost to lift it a little bit and push the song a little bit. That's how I like to use distortion and overdrive. So sucking out the low end is not something you want at all. You don't want it to drop out when you want it to be impactful.
Yeah.
In terms of being inexpensive as well, unfortunately, a lot of the affordable ones tend to, that's a common characteristic that they tend to do. Talking about the tube screamers, do you mean the guitar, just the normal tube screamers, or the bass focused one?
Well, the bass tube screamer, I think that has a blend control on it as well, which helps with the low end drop off. But just with how the general tube screamer circuit works, you typically do need that, unless it's something like the way huge Green Rhino, because Green Rhino has an active boost at 100 hertz. There is the Earthquaker Devices Plumes.
Oh, yes.
Which is fantastic.
Bloody spoiler alert, mate. I've actually got two people I know with Plumes pedals at the minute who have both said, yeah, you can borrow it when you want for a review. So I'm so excited to get one on, because I really like the sound of those pedals. I think they're quite transparent sounding. One that I think I'd recommend, or two, I guess, when I recently checked out the bass Soul Food from Electro Harmonics.
Yeah, that is a fantastic overdrive.
Pronounce that really weirdly. Electro Harmonics, Electro Harmonics, really, really nice. And it's only 60, 70, 80, less than £100. It's so cheap. I've had people in the comments say that, compare it to a dark glass pedal and be like, oh my God, that's the dark glass sound. And that's what I've been wanting. But for me, I think it sounds a bit more transparent. When I say transparent, I mean that you can hear the tone in there, the clean bass tone. And so you can still tell that it's a P bass, or tell that it's a jazz bass underneath. I don't really like distortion overdrive that takes over too much or makes it indistinguishable. I quite like to have it sonically being quite similar to the clean tone, but just adding a bit of dirt on it. What do you look for in an overdrive?
To be honest, it kind of depends. It depends what context I'm using it in. Because sometimes I want more of a mid-focused, really boosty, grindy, punky kind of sound. But then other times, with Dollar, when I use overdrive, I use my Sonic Gold Effects Beta.
Okay.
And that's slightly mid-scooped and kind of old school sound. It sounds like an SVT.
Can't go wrong with an SVT sound.
It's very situational for me.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And like I say, it depends what kind of bass player you are, because if you're only doing one thing, one band, then you only need one sound. Maybe, not really, but you know what I mean. Whereas if, yourself, you're doing multiple different projects, multiple different genres, then you're going to want something, or different flavors of different things. So like you say, it's very situational. One that I think is affordable and can be situational is a pedal that I really regret selling. And that is the Aftershock by Source Audio. And that pedal is actually Fuzz overdrive and distortion all in one, but it's just got a little switch to go between them. And at the time, I didn't really appreciate that. But, oh no, sorry. No, I got that wrong. It's distortion, but you can go from tube, heavy, to fuzz. So there's fuzz in there as well. And that's about £150. And I loved that pedal. Thought it was really cool. So that would be my recommendation. That and the bass Soul Food.
Yeah, I think that the Aftershock's fully MIDI compatible as well. So you can basically turn it from one pedal into about 50.
Yeah, absolutely. At the time when I owned it, I never really used any of like that stuff.
Source Audio have been doing that for years. I remember it must have been about 10 years ago, I had the Source Audio, it was the multi-wave bass distortion, like one of their OG pedals. And I really didn't appreciate it at the time because it was just mental. It was mental what they were doing with it. Because their Source Audio, they're wizards. They always have been.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got so many cases like that where I'm like, damn, I wish I didn't get rid of that. I suppose we should move on. Okay, let's move on to the next segment. So this segment is a fun one. This segment is called That Tone You Own. So ahead of recording this, I asked our lovely co-host, Danny Higgins, to send me a tone of his that he has created. So it's just isolated bass sounds. I will listen to it in just a minute, and then we'll break down all of the different elements, how we made it, why we made it, what function it serves, etc. Let's have a listen to that tone now. There is a lot to unpack there. There's a lot going on, and I can't get over it. It sounds so good. So, first of all, what is this from?
This is from one of the new Clockwork singles that will be released. Like, I think it's one of the last few singles we're releasing of our 6 that will be coming out over the next 6 or so months.
So this is like a world exclusive. It sounds really cool. There's loads of effects in there. But first off, let's start off with what bass is that? Is that the Spectre, Euro?
Yeah, that's the Spectre. Although there isn't any dark glass on this one because we recorded it before I got the dark glass head. So the amp tone on there it's from the Helix.
Ah, okay. So what is your preferred amp on the Helix? Because I pretty much just mainly always end up using the Ampeg SVT one because I love that sound. Well, a couple of reasons. Love that sound. It's good for demos because it's like a standard sound.
Everyone knows what an SVT is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just my favorite on there. What amp is that you're using?
I think I was using the SVT4 Pro.
So the one I was just talking about. Brilliant.
I did use the SVT4 Pro or the Mesa, like the Mesa 400 Plus that they've got in there. It's normally one of those two. So
in that first section, obviously, is that an Octave you've got going on in there?
Yeah, it's a Boss OC2 clone by Veiltone.
Oh,
Veilton?
good.
Veiltone?
I think it's Velton. Velton. I don't think they've got an E on the end. Now, let me consult my strap that's on a bass that isn't in this room. Oh no, there it is. Yes, Velton with no E on the end. Velton are really cool. They do some
really, really cool.
They're one of these like Chinese manufacturers that a lot of people probably dismiss quite quickly. But actually, I really like the multi effects that I got from them. The G something.
The Helix E one that they did.
Yeah, that's the one. It sounded great. There's sounds on there that are super usable. Obviously, not as many functions, not as many things as the Helix. But for like 120 quid or whatever it is, it's a really good alternative. Going back to your tone, obviously we can't hear what else is going on in that song at that time. What kind of effect are you trying to go for in that segment?
Well, it's a weird layout for a song, if I'm honest, because it's like intro, verse, chorus, then like 2-3 minutes of outro. So that's the bass line I tend to use just after the second chorus.
Okay.
Where it just drops down to just bass, and then organs come in, acoustic guitars come in. There's I think 12 layers of vocals.
Whoa.
There's a lot going on.
I can't wait to hear that. That's going to sound really cool. Yeah, nice. And then it goes into this thick, what's like a fuzzy sound after that. What is it you're using there?
I'm actually using the plumes for that.
Are you? I was like, oh yeah, that definitely sounds like a fuzz. Definitely not a fuzz. Oh, cool. So have you got the plumes then? Is that?
Yeah, I've had one for a while. I picked it up a little bit over 12 months ago. And it was pretty solidly on my pedal board until I got the solid gold effects beta.
With that segment then, is that then going, because you said you're coming out of a chorus, are you using that distortion then to go back into a chorus, or is that into like where the verse picks up?
No, because this is like the outro section of the song. So it's basically just dynamically building up more and more as more instruments come in.
Well, it sounds really cool. Now, when to my untrained ear, should be a trained ear by now, but it's not. It sounded like you had some kind of modulation in there as well. I could kind of get little wisps of that.
Yeah, I'm using a vibrato pedal.
Oh, vibrato on bass, man! It's so good.
The Boss VB2W.
Why vibrato? Why did you make that decision? It's a good decision. Why did you make it?
Well, I'm a big fan of Juan Alderey from like Pedals and Effects, the YouTube channel, and then he plays in the Mars Volta, Marilyn Manson, like so many people he plays with.
Yeah.
But he often combines octave down and vibrato, and it sort of creates that like 808 sound if you solo if you just have the octave down, then with the dry signal coming through, it just sounds huge, and it's almost like a chorus, but not quite.
Yeah, because I was struggling to, mixed in with the other effects, I was struggling to figure out what modulation it was, and at times I was second guessing. Like some people at home might think, oh, well, in a mix, even less you'd hear that, but I bet in that mix that's not sticks out in a bad way, but like just really adds to the feel of that segment in that.
It really seems I really feel like it complements the organ, because Octave Adam, who played organ on the song as well, he has like a proper old Hammond, like the proper one with the magnetic spinny stuff in it.
Yeah, no way. I think you can say like, yeah, we went down to the church and whipped old Granny off the organ and just let rip. Amazing. Well, I can't wait to hear that full song and that segment within there, because I can tell that it's, it sounds like it's well thought out, all those effects that are on there.
There are some other bits that you're going to love. Like there's a bit where I'm using the Source Audio Manta envelope filter with the hot hands.
For
the dubstep. It's imagine it like an expression pedal, but on a motion sensor ring.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
the Navarro.
No way. You found a way to use that in a song. That is so good.
I'm using that in the second verse of the song, and there's some parts of it where I have like a 16th hard tremolo, so it's set up for 16th notes. and it just starts chopping that up, and it sounds ridiculous and
Oh.
fantastic.
I think modulation is, of chorus is used quite a lot, but I think other modulation is quite underused on bass. It can really add to the vibe and the feel. But when I did a video on like the top 5 modulation effects for bass, and even then, like, that video broadened my horizons, because I'd never really bothered that much with some of them before. I'm normally quite a straight, compressed, clean tone kind of sound guy, but it's so good, and it's awesome to hear that someone's actually making use of them within a full band mix. I think that's really cool. Before we move on to the next bit, obviously you are a big user of Helix stuff, and all of those effects would be in the Helix in some regard, but you're obviously using lots of pedals with it. So
yeah,
why is that?
well, I feel like there's some things that the Helix does really, really well, but then there's other things where personally I just prefer the feel of the
Knobs.
of the pedal and the knobs. Like with the Octave thing, the Veil Turn Octave I've got is a Boss OC2 clone. So it's a very, very dubby sounding in the club, glitchy octave, which the Helix doesn't do because it's digital. So all the octaves in the Helix are really nice, clean and pristine sounding, which wasn't the vibe I wanted with that octave down sound.
Yeah, I think that's a totally, valid answer. Some people might just want to get like an HX Stomp for, that's it. They've got everything they need all in one. That's done. But you're totally right that it does some things brilliantly and then some things not so good. For me, I don't really like any of the compressors that are on there.
I tend to use the Rochester comp a lot. I've had some good luck with that one.
Yeah. I need to dive back in.
The LA comp as well, which isn't LA2A, but LA2A is dead easy to use.
Yeah, the LA was was my go-to, but then I got the Origin Effects Cali 76, and since then I haven't really. Cali. It's cool, man. It's a bloody cool pedal. Expensive. I would not buy one new. I'd rarely buy anything new though. Cool. Well, thank you so much for that breakdown of the tone. That's really interesting, and I think a lot of people going to be excited to hear that song, myself included. What is that song going to be called?
That song is called No Waters.
Amazing. And you don't know when it's coming out yet?
I think if everything goes according to plan, it should come out November, when we're meant to be on tour, I think.
Well, fingers crossed.
That's still really things pending and COVID.
Yeah, of course. Ugh, the C word. I really hope that all goes to plan, because I want to hear it. So, okay, moving on to our final question, which forms the big bass debate. This week's big bass debate. This is a question from Gabriel Gazzotti. I'm so sorry if I have butchered your name. I probably do it every time, so maybe I should just start doing it on purpose. Gabriel on YouTube, who asks, he says, now you've got a 5-string in your hands. Would you recommend it to those who have always played 4-string? Cheers. Thank you very much for the question. So this, I recently got a 5-string for the first time, owning one. I've played 5-strings before, but I've not had such an extended period of time with one before. I'd never really had a use for one before, because I'd always been in bands where, I haven't really felt like I've needed the low B before. However, now stepping into the world of 5-strings, it's like a whole new world, to quote Aladdin. And my eyes have been opened to the possibilities and realms that are within 5-string. Now, Danny, you are obviously what is one of your top 3 basses. That Spectre is a 5-string. I think your P bass is a 5-string as well, isn't it, Messiah? Yeah, you are a connoisseur of both the 4 and the 5. Did you start on a 4-string?
Yeah, I started with 4.
Yeah.
I only got a 5-string about 2 years ago, I think.
Oh, really? How did you find that transition?
Honestly, I found it quite relatively easy because, and before that, I had basses that I tuned down a fourth, fifth. Like I tuned them BEAD,
Yeah. Okay.
so I was kind of used to the lower positionings.
It's funny, isn't it? Because sometimes I like it in songs, and a lot of older Paramore stuff. We keep going back to Paramore. I could do that all day. Some of the older Paramore stuff seems to utilize like a low B in the recordings. I think because there's some super low notes in some of the really old songs, where in a section, if it's doing the same thing in the verse or to the chorus, same line, then just going from playing it like essentially an octave higher to then utilizing that low B can really add some oomph to a section. And it's things like that that really attracted me to a 5-string. It is a bit of a learning curve. Like it does take a couple of sessions of sitting down and playing it to get used to it, I think, not just with the string spacing, but like it depends on your playing style, I think, because I play very hard with a pick, and I like to think my articulation is pretty good across the strings. But then when you add another one in and you're trying to play lines that you play on the 4-string normally, you're like, oh my God, where's that? Or like, oh, I'm treating the B string like the E string, So it takes getting used to. But once you kind of look at it a different way, almost like rebuild the song around that, having that low B, I think it's quite easy to get used to. Now, would you recommend, so if people that are starting bass, would you recommend that they start on a 4 or a 5?
Oh, now that's a question, because I think if you start on a 5-string, you become very used to it, and that makes playing four strings a struggle.
Oh, I thought you were going to go the other way then. I thought you were going to say it makes 4 strings then, easier because you're doing like the quote harder one first.
I think that because now I'm very used to being able to play across 2 octaves in one hand position, which is a big advantage of a 5-string. But if you learn to play like that, and then you're thrown into a gig where you have to use a 4-string, and you don't have that like low E on the 5th fret, you're going to be a little bit lost.
I think 5-strings are very like functional, and they need to be functional. Like if you need to go down to that low B to if it meets the needs of the song, or if the guitars are tuned lower and you want to beef it out, then I think that's where it really works. Or if like you need a 5-string, because that Jacko only had 4,
No, that's a lie.
Yeah, come on. So I don't know where I was going with that point now, but yeah, it's definitely a bit of a learning curve. I would recommend, if you've always had 4 strings, trying a 5-string or getting and not just trying one in a shop, because talking from personal experience, that's all that I had done before, and I was always put off because I was like, oh, this is like, that initial learning curve. I was like, oh no, like, oh, this is too weird. Now I'm not doing this. And it's a big investment to make if you're going to buy one. You've got to want to use it and get used to it. I think it's all about practice. And when you do, if you've already know how to play a 4-string and you go to a 5-string and play it for a couple of weeks or a couple of days, whatever, then when you go back to the 4-string, I felt even more articulate in terms of watching out on string spacing and muting strings and accidentally hitting other strings when I'm strumming, things like that. So I'd recommend going, if you're going to get a 5-string, is don't just try one in a shop and dismiss it. Actually give it a good go.
Yeah, you do need a couple of weeks with them to get used to the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's weird as well, because when you play things on like an E or a D that's on a 4-string, that note can feel quite boomy sometimes. If you're playing that same string on a 5-string, it doesn't feel boomy at all because you've got that low B. Maybe it's just a thing that's in my head, but yeah, I
think it's something to do with the electronics, because I've noticed that sometimes on my 4-strings the E can sound boomy, but it doesn't on my 5-strings.
Is that to do with like the magnet position in the pickup?
Yeah, I think it might be. I think they might compensate for having the lower string, and then that obviously affects how the E string sounds, at least with the pickup design and stuff, I think.
Of course, yeah. That's really interesting. I'd never really thought about that before. I thought it was all in my head. But that's why, that's why we have these guests on this podcast. So they can educate me. That's all this is about. It's a totally selfish thing where I just need to be taught. I refuse to do it myself. Gabriel might be thinking of getting a 5-string. Let's add a little bit extra on here for him. Affordable 5 strings. What do you think would be a good place to start, or a first one?
I really rate the Sire stuff. Every Sire bass I've had has been really good.
Because you got a V3 as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and I did briefly own a V7 fretless.
Oh yeah.
I wish I didn't have to sell that.
The regret. But it's always to fund more gear, right? That's what you tell yourself.
Oh, it's for a new audio interface, so not even the gear.
That's not exciting at all. I mean, worthwhile, but not exciting. Yeah, side stuff, and that's a 5-string that you. Oh no, you got the 4-string, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got the 4-string V3 and then the 5-string P7.
Yeah, so I think that's a great shout. To be fair, I've not tried the 5-string V3 before, but if it's anything like Sire's other ones, then I guess it would be pretty good. It's all about the tension on that low B for me, I think. I think that's what I always look for. At time recording, as video has gone out an hour ago, was my video on the Jackson Spectre basses. They're about 360 odd pounds. Really good 5-string. I really like it. I think it definitely competes, and if not beats, Ibanez's at that same price range.
Ooh, I was going to suggest Ibanez as well for the budget bass. I played an Ibanez SR505 before, which was nice. It was nice. It felt really good for the money. And I think Patrick Hunter has one, and he really rates his.
I was just going to say, yeah, I think he does. And the thing I like about that Jackson is that the preamp for an affordable bass is really, really good. Loads of usable tones and nice and crisp. I don't know if that's helped at all in the slightest, but food for thought nonetheless. So that was the big bass debate for this week and all of our questions. Thank you so much to everyone that submitted them throughout the week and leading up to this podcast. Let me know in a comment down below. If you're listening on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify or something, maybe just give me a DM on Instagram. That's at Johnny Dibble. And just let me know what you think about this podcast and what other guests you want to get on here. Do you want to see Danny again? Please be nice. Please be nice. I know it's hard. It doesn't make it easy, but be nice. And I'd love to have Danny back on the show again. The great thing about this is that we can do that. It's rotating. We can have people back on. That's the beauty of it. So if you've got any questions specifically for Danny, fire them down in the comments below. And when he's back on, because he'll come back on, right?
Yeah.
Or why not? So we could do this again, and it'll be a bloody great time. So, Danny, tell the people, where can they find you? What are you up to? What do you want them to do?
Okay, so probably best place to find me on social media is on Instagram. Like Johnny mentioned my Instagram earlier, and that's at Higgins_bassist. Other than that, I'd probably check out at Clockwork Band at Generations_Metal. I think. I'm really bad at social media. At $JadeUK.
Amazing. I'll pop all of that. Don't worry, everyone. I'll put it all in the description. Ideal. Thank you so much for coming on, Danny. It's been a great time.
Cheers for having me, Johnny.
These are every other week at the minute. We might do them every week eventually. Who knows? Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.